Hey everybody, so welcome back to Jim Bob's Garden. So I want to talk to you today about something that's near and dear to my heart, and that is how to garden without going broke. A lot of people complain about all the different things that they have to buy and spend and do to grow a garden, and I'm here to tell you that that's just not the case. All right. Now there is some initial outlay that might cost you some money, like this compost bin, for example. I spent, I think it was $110 on concrete blocks and rebar to put it in the ground. But from that, I have gotten free fertilizer. Man, I want to say it's been 3 years now. Not really sure. It's been several years. But you don't even have to have all this. All right. It is handy though. All right, and that's kind of the thing. So one of the things that happens with a garden is you'll see online you need this and you need that and you need this and you need that. And I'm going to tell you, really, for the most part, you don't need a lot of it. I mean, there's a few things you really ought to have. I love my potato fork, which is, very handy to have. Comes in useful. A good shovel, a rake, a hoe maybe. You just don't need a lot of things to grow a garden. I mean, I've said this many times before, but literally people used to garden with sharp sticks. I mean, people have been gardening since people were people. I mean, some people say it goes back 10, 12, maybe longer, 1,000 years. And it's just not that hard, okay? Now, I'm going to go through some of the things I think that will make it cheaper for you to garden. And first and most important is compost. Now, compost is very important if you're trying to garden cheaply, because it's free. I mean, literally, the only thing it costs me to make my compost is the gas that I use to mow my yard. Now, I mean, that is an expense, but that's an expense I would have had anyway. So the biggest bulk of my compost is grass clippings. And, I mean, to be fair, my grass clippings are weeds and grass. I don't keep a pristine weed-free yard. I don't spend that kind of money. I'm not going to spend money to have people come in and spray for weeds or to buy weed and feed. One, I don't like it because it costs money. All right. And two, I don't like the idea of a monoculture. I prefer something that is, as close to wild as possible while still having to keep it mowed. And I do live in an HOA, but I've got a pretty relaxed HOA. We do have some yard Nazis that come around and beat you up once a year or so about various things going on in your yard, and I'll deal with those as they come up. But fortunately, one of them is not having a weed-free yard, which I love. And I will caution you against buying a home in an HOA. All right, but that's another subject I'll get into later. But how can you grow a garden without spending a ton of money? Well, like I said, number one, most important thing is compost. And you don't have to have a bin. You can just have a pile. If you have some leftover fencing, you can use a fencing to build a circle. And I've done that before. And in fact, I've got one going on just behind the camera here. Or you can just put a pile in the ground. All right, you don't need to have a compost bin. Now, I really believe that my compost is created much faster here. I believe that my compost comes out much better with my little concrete block compost bin. But it's not something that's absolutely necessary. But compost is the key. That is probably the most important, because it's a fertilizer that you create here in your garden. All right, and it doesn't cost you anything. Basically, you're just letting the microbes tear apart everything you put into your pile and turn it into good, fertile, very usable dirt, which acts as a fertilizer in your soil. And I've got a pretty good garden going. I mean, I've got a lot of good things happening in the garden, and it's all due to compost. I don't buy fertilizer. And I think that's one of the biggest expenses for most people is fertilizer. Probably the next biggest expense is water. A lot of people spend a lot of money on water. In fact, I do. I spend a lot of money here on water. But the biggest percentage of that comes from the sprinkler system I have to keep my grass growing. Now, if I didn't water, in fact, I've got a guy whose yard I take care of while they're gone, and they don't water hardly at all, if at all. And there are times when the grass really starts to die out, but it will survive, particularly if you get the right kind of drought-tolerant grass. And if you don't water your grass, eventually what comes up is the stuff that will survive, which is kind of amazing. There's always something that will grow in dirt. If you leave it go, something will usually grow. Now, there are some dirts out there that just nothing will grow in, but that's not the case, at least not right here. Okay, so that's the first thing. Compost, 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 compost. Grow some compost. That is the best cost-saving measure that you can have in your garden. The second thing I think that you can utilize to save yourself some money is saving seeds. Now, I save a lot of seeds from a lot of different things. Tomatoes, and let me think, collard greens I've got seeds for. Beans I got my own seeds for. I use my potatoes I bought at the store, or potatoes that I've saved for seed. I've got mustard seed, broccoli seed, radish seed. I'm fixing to have kale seed. But most of what I plant now, and it's getting to where it's more and more of the seed that I plant is actually seed that I have gathered. Now, one of the disadvantages of that is that you don't get hybrids. And hybrids are specifically developed so that a plant will have certain properties. And that's fine. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not telling you not to buy seed, but what I'm saying is that, you know, if you want to save money, you can grow from your own seed. Now, I know that there's something out there called copyrighted plants and all that, and I'm pretty sure that that applies more to commercial type seeds, but nonetheless, I'm all about trying to grow what I can from what I've got. Another thing is seedlings, all right, or transplants. So a lot of what I have grown in this garden is from cuttings. All right, so I buy a plant and I get cuttings from that plant, and then I take those cuttings and I plant them elsewhere and grow from that. Or seeds, like loquats are a great seeding fruit. They grow very well here in the Jacksonville area. And most of my loquat trees, and I've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've got 8 loquat trees. Now, when we got here, the loquat trees, there was 2 of them here, I believe. Yeah, there was 2. And I moved one, left the other one stay, and those 2 have grown up to be really nice, large, productive trees. But from that, all the rest of them have come from either cuttings, well, actually no, from seeds. All of them are from seeds. I haven't really done a lot of cuttings on my loquat. Mulberries, I've got mulberries everywhere. I mean, I probably got 20, 30 mulberry bushes and trees. In fact, I've got a mulberry hedge, which badly needs to be trimmed, but I'm fixing to do that here shortly. And all of that has come from cuttings. I have blackberries that have come from cuttings. I have grapevines that have come from cuttings. I have a lot of different things that have come. I've got, oh man, I hate to even imagine how many goji berry bushes I've gotten from cuttings. I've got them planted all over the place. I've got raspberries that have come from cuttings, or actually just letting them root in the ground and then digging them out from there. So a lot of that comes from things like that. All right, and all of those, I mean, any one of those plants could have cost me 15, 20 bucks or more. I mean, now plants are getting more and more expensive. I mean, some trees are now going for $50 a pop. I'm like, wow, that's a lot of money. Now, I have bought a lot of trees, and I will tell you that that is one expense which I highly encourage. I know that it costs money to buy trees, but one of the beauties of trees is they'll last for, 20 years or better. dependent upon the tree and produce fruit for the better part of that 20 years. That's a great investment. You know, if you could work out a plan with Walmart where I'll pay you $50 now and be able to get fruit for the next 20 years, most people would be like, oh yeah, I'd love to do that. Then another expense that a lot of people have that I don't hear is insecticide. A lot of people will spend a lot of money trying to solve the problems of your plants. Well, I've got insect damage here and I got insect damage there. And I will tell you, I don't use any insecticide. I have never bought neem. I have never bought BT. I did originally, when we first got here back in 2016, put insecticide on my ground. And now I kind of regret it. I wish I hadn't. And I have since decided not to use insecticide of any sort. And in fact, it's actually saved me a lot of money, but it's also really helped out a lot, because a lot of things that were not here before are back. Like we've seen praying mantis, we've seen a lot of ladybugs. We have a good wasp population. The wasps, you know, everybody hates wasps, but the wasps are very critical. So they had a thing going on in a lot of the wild areas here in the world, up in the north in particular. And basically, one of the problems was that we had hunted wolves to extinction. And where we hunted the predators to extinction, because, you know, they also were a problem for cattle ranchers and people and such. But when we lost the predators, then we had an overabundance of the prey. Wolves help to cull sick, weak animals, and they keep populations down. And the same kind of thing happens in a garden. All right, if you kill off all your wasps, which, yeah, I know they sting and they can be a pain, but they are the predators. And without the prey, then what ends up happening is without the predators, then what happens is you have an explosion of prey populations. And in the garden, you know, we don't want wasps around because they sting. But if you don't have wasps, then what's going to eat the caterpillars? You need that balance. You need that beneficial insect population, and you know, without the beneficials, you will have an overabundance of prey. But on the flip side of that, without the prey, you'll have a loss of predators. So if I could tell you just 3 things to do to save yourself money in the garden, the first one would be grow compost. Use compost for your fertilizer. Then there's some other things that you can do to reduce your to create fertilizer for your garden, like weed tea and so on, that will create fertile things to put into your garden that will really help. Oh wow, I have got a hummingbird going around pollinating my cucumbers. That is so cool. Wow, never seen a hummingbird on cucumbers. That is so neat. Right. Anyway, I lost track of my train of thought there. But yeah, so you can create fertilizer for free. If you have animals, which I can't really have here, you can use manure. If you don't have animals, then what you can do is, like I say, a lot of compost and a lot of things like weed tea and mulching and so on. All helps to improve and maintain that fertility in the soil. All right, but of the 3 things I would tell you to really watch your expenditures is 1, like I said, grow you some compost. 2, don't fertilize. All right, stop spending money on fertilizer. And that's why you're going to grow your compost. And 3, don't spend a lot of money on insecticides. And then the last thing I'll leave you with is the pursuit of perfection. And I've made a video on this before, and I'll put a link up here to it. But man, that pursuit of perfection can be hugely expensive. What's wrong with my cucumber? Well, there's this. All right, well then what do I need to do about that? Well, you got to get this chemical and that chemical and give it this fertilizer and that fertilizer. And if you do this, this, and this, then you should have perfect plants. Well, stop it. All right. It's that pursuit of perfection that really costs you a lot of money. Yeah, I've spent $150 trying to grow $10 worth of tomatoes. Well, that's just silly. All right? I mean, that'd be like going to work and paying the people at your job to be able to hang out with them. I mean, that makes no sense to me. You're going to have damage, you're going to have pests, and they're going to cause problems. And my solution to that is plant more. If you have a lot of things planted, if one part of the crop fails, hopefully the rest of it will continue to grow. And that's one of the reasons why I save my own seed. So I understand seeds are not hugely expensive, but if you get a package of 15, 20 cucumber seeds and you plant them and they all come up but they all get infested with bugs, then you're like, well, I gotta go buy more to try and get a crop. Well, now if you save your cucumber seeds, get yourself a nice, really ripe cucumber, let it grow on the vine until it's very, very ripe, of a variety that you really like and that seems to grow well in your area. And then you got free seeds. And then when you have a failure, or even when you're starting out planting your plants, plant extra, plant a lot, fill that garden. All right, and if something dies back, then you got backups. You know, the other thing I do is I've got different spots where I plant things, and the more you spread that out, the less likely a bug infestation in one area is going to devastate your entire crop. All right, so that's something else to think about. But anyway, life is going to get rough here for a little while. I grew up in the 70s. I got my first job in 1978, and then on into the 80s. And I'm going to tell you that, you know, we are starting into a cycle that looks a lot like the 80s, where you got high inflation, high interest rates. I remember in 1989, shortly after we got married, we were looking at buying a house. Was it 89 or 90? Anyway, we looked at buying a house, and the interest rate was 10%. You know, people are complaining now about 5%, but I mean, I remember in the 80s, they were looking at 10% interest to buy a home. A 30-year fixed mortgage at 10%, which is, you know, twice what we've got now. And I know that at one point I had money in a savings and loan in a CD that was earning me 12%. Interest rates were very, very high. And I think there's a good possibility we're going to end up in that same kind of situation. I don't know that it'll go that high. I'm not a financial expert, but you know, things are fixing to get expensive. And the best thing I can tell you to save money on that is to grow a garden and learn how to grow it cheaply. So if you keep track of what I'm doing here and you watch how I go about doing my garden, I try really hard not to spend a lot of money unless I have to. And there are a lot of ways to go about gardening without spending a lot of money. And I'll try and show you those as we go along as much as possible. But those three things, save your seed, grow your compost, and don't use fertilizer and insecticide, will probably save you the most money overall of anything else I can tell you. Alright, so thanks for stopping by. Do me a favor, give me a like and a subscribe and let me know what you think. And most importantly, grow something. And learn how to grow stuff cheap. Alright? Because if you're spending a lot of money, then I think it's a lot less likely that you're going to continue to garden. Alright, thanks once again for stopping by. Y'all take care and grow something.